Lately, I have seen a lot of people try to use Welt as a sustain for the team. It's not because Welt could heal like Abundance character or give shields to all allies like Preservation characters. It's because Welt could delay enemies' action and reduce enemy speed from his kit. Because of this, you can make your enemies stand still without attacking your team, and your DPS could deal a lot of damage in a short time. But, does Welt really fit as a sustainer in a team? Even though he could delay enemies' action, that doesn't mean your team will not get any hit. If you mess up the cycle, well, you could say goodbye to one of your characters in the battlefield. Welcome to Gang Story Zero channel, and let's get into it. So before we start to our main topic, I will give you a quick introduction to Welt. Welt is a standard 5-star character with imaginary nihility path. In the story, he is part of Astral Express, and as a trailblazer, we already traveled with Welt to Xianzhou Lohu and Penacony. Since version 1.0, I thought Welt is a DPS character, even though he is nihility path. If you look at his kit, some of his traits support him to be a main DPS. Even so, I already built him then, but he seems not to help me a lot in Memory of Chaos at that time. I never had any time after that to invest again in Welt because I am more focusing to invest in other characters that can be more impactful in the Memory of Chaos that time. Until I saw some content creators trying to use Welt as a sustainer, especially after Akron release in the beginning of 2.1 version. So I spent some of my resources and tried to try him with Akron, Pela, and Ruanmei. Before I tried him, I had never done a Memory of Chaos run without sustainer like Abundance or Preservation character. So I got a little bit confused on how to maximize Welt Sustain. When I look at his kit, his skill can reduce enemy speed, and his ultimate can reduce or delay enemy's action and reducing enemy speed if the enemy is in an imprisoned state. Remember this, when an enemy is in an imprisoned state. So how to get enemies to an imprisoned state? To get enemies to an imprisoned state, we need to use either Welt ultimate or we need to break an enemy's imaginary weakness. If we want to use the first method, which means use his ultimate again and again in a short time, we need to use Welt skill every time it Welt turn and get energy regeneration rate as much as possible and as fast as possible. You can use energy regeneration rate on the link rope, and you can also use the free-to-play Silver Wolf icon. But I think we cannot do this spam ultimate to the enemies because you need to regenerate again and again and again, and you need it takes time to do that. The enemies will already move again and their imprisoned state will be removed. Instead, the second way, or the second method, which is the easiest way, and it was to break the enemy imaginary weakness. But remember, not all enemies have imaginary weakness. These pros and cons condition will lead to our answer in the end. Okay, so we already talked a little about his kit and how to maximize his sustain in the previous section. Now, what kind of condition can we use Welt as a sustain? I already mentioned in the beginning of this video that even though we could delay enemies' action, it doesn't mean our character will not get hit by the enemies. The best condition to use Welt as a sustain is when the enemy has imaginary weakness, like in the current Memory of Chaos. Otherwise, we need to bring Silver Wolf if you want to brute force the fight. Bringing Silver Wolf is also not answering the whole problems, because Silver Wolf could produce other weaknesses other than imaginary if our team element and the enemies are very different. From the team lineup, the current possible lineup I could think of is only the Acheron team and Mono Imaginary team. For the Acheron team, Acheron is a front-loaded DPS, which means she can kill enemies as fast as possible. For the Mono Imaginary team, this team could break enemies' imaginary weakness as fast as possible, so Welt could use his ultimate to delay the enemy's action. It's still hard for me to consider other team lineups, since most DPS need to take time and set up to deal a lot of damage and to kill the enemies. Now, we are already in the conclusion section, which is the final part of this video. After hearing some of the detailed explanation about Welt Sustain, it's time to answer the question: is Welt really felt as a sustainer in a team? Overall, I cannot say he can replace Abundance or a Preservation character in terms of long fight or battle. Welt still had a limit where in some conditions, the enemies will have another chance to attack your team. All of your characters in the battle need to survive all the damage taken by them. The purpose of Welt Sustain is that your team can survive in a short time while your DPS do the job to kill the enemies as fast as possible. The main purpose also is to maximize your DPS damage. To summarize things up, we are gonna see the list of things you need to consider when using Welt as a sustain. So the first point is it's the pros condition, where Welt is your second DPS on the team. Even though I said in the beginning of this video that his damage is not as big as you think, if you build him right, or maybe you put a perfect team lineup, he could help the team to deal more damage to the enemies. And then for the second point is, this is like a neutral point, where Welt is one of Acheron's best sustainers. Remember that Acheron needs another 2 Nihility character in the team to maximize her trace. You can use Welt as the second Nihility character, and then you can replace your sustainer to a Harmony character, or you can bring another Nihility character. And then for the third point is, will be also a neutral point, where you need a front-loaded DPS in Welt team. Remember, the purpose of Welt is that Welt cannot sustain the whole team if it is a long-term battle. Front-loaded DPS like Acheron will kill the enemy faster than any other DPS, so it means that it's also synchronized with the Welt purpose to be a sustainer. And then for the fourth point is, there is only a few teams available who can maximize Welt Sustain. The current team lineup, I think, is only Acheron team and Mono Imaginary team. And then for the fifth point is, the most effective use of Welt Sustain is when the enemy has imaginary weakness. Otherwise, it will be hard to sustain the whole team for the whole battle. And then for the last point is, you need a high investment team. So yes, the purpose of Welt, as I mentioned again before, is to kill enemies as fast as possible. To kill enemies as fast as possible, you need to invest a lot in your DPS. You also need to invest a lot in your Harmony characters, and maybe the other Nihility characters first. After investing in another character, you are available to use Welt Sustain. So I have one extra tip for Welt Sustain. Welt could be a better sustain character if you put him with Ruanmei. Why? I will give my own explanation. Ruanmei will give Welt weakness break efficiency, which means he will break enemies' weakness faster. Ruanmei Ultimate would also give a debuff to the enemies where she can delay enemies' action if the enemies entered weakness break state. So yeah, these two kits synchronize each other well, and I think you can put Welt and Ruanmei in the same team to help the Welt Sustain better. Overall, Welt Sustain is not an answer for every team, especially if you are a new player who doesn't have a lot of invest character. I recommend you to build the other character first, and after that, Welt Sustain could be an option if you are already an endgame player, which has already lots of invest characters in your account. Moreover, this Welt Sustain strategy is an interesting theme to try in the future of the content. So, I think that's all from me. Leave a like if you like this video and subscribe if you want more another Honkai style content. I will see you guys on the other video. See ya.